Welcome back to the Middle of Culture. I'm one of your hosts, Eden.
And I'm your other host, Peter.
So, Peter, how have things been? I know you've been dealing with a lot of snow, but what else have you been up to?
Yeah, a lot of snow, busy with work. But other than that, I've been doing quite a bit of reading. I know we talked last time about how I had finally finished The Wheel of Time.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I must have had some pent up reading demand in me, because in the 3 weeks or whatever since I finished The Wheel of Time, I have read Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. Basically, I've been going through the secret projects. So I read Tress.
Sure.
I read The Frugal Wizard's Guide to Surviving Medieval England. I finished Yumi and the Nightmare Painter last night. And I've read All Souls Lost, a little book by Dan Moran that I may have mentioned previously on the pod. So yeah, doing quite a bit of reading. 4 books in the last 3 weeks.
That's pretty impressive.
It's been fun. It has felt liberating because all of these are kind of one-offs. While Yumi and Tress and now The Sunlit Man, which is the one I'm currently reading, all take place within the connected Cosmere that most of Sanderson's books take place in, none of them are connected directly to other books in the Cosmere.
Sure.
And so there's a lot more, again, just it feels a lot more free than The Wheel of Time, which again was just so many books, so many words all tied together that it kind of feels like having these things that are sort of more one-offs has been almost liberating and has kind of got me cruising through. So that's been a lot of fun. And I have very much enjoyed all of them. Some of them are better than others. I would say so far that The Frugal Wizard's Guide to Surviving Medieval England is the weakest. It was fun. I enjoyed it, but it's one that I'm already kind of forgetting.
This is one of the Brandon Sanderson books? Or that's the non-Brandon Sanderson?
Yeah, so that's
England,
the one.
England exists in his weird sci-fi fantasy universe?
No, so the Frugal Wizard's Guide to Surviving Medieval England is the one book out of those 4 secret projects that he did that is not in the Cosmere.
Okay, I was going to say, that's okay, Brandon, that's dumb.
Yeah, no, this is, it is, I don't anticipate you reading it, and I actually don't think I would recommend you read this one. And so I'll just kind of say, spoiler alert, sort of. Basically, it's a story where the main character has sort of, kind of the classic almost amnesia trope, but come to find out that in his world, they have discovered parallel dimensions / universes, and corporations can buy the rights to little slivers of these parallel dimensions.
Okay.
And then what they do is they basically sell them. You buy your own parallel dimension, and they send you there with the idea that with your knowledge and everything, you can basically go to this sort of version of medieval England, and you'll become a god to the people there.
Okay.
So kind of, and our main character ends up in one of these, but doesn't really remember who he is or how he got there as a result of the way the transfer occurred, and then kind of unwinds it as it goes. And it was fun. Again, I didn't have any regrets that I spent the time reading it. I mean, it only took me a couple days.
Sure.
But not the strongest. And that's okay. Again, I look at these secret projects, and these were 4 books he wrote in the year, in addition to him staying on target and writing all of his other books that he's working on. So these were just kind of when in the pandemic, he couldn't go to conferences and he couldn't do all these sort of things that he would normally do as a way to kind of channel his energy from not being able to do those things. He wrote these 4 books in addition to his normal stuff. So, again, it's fun. It was enjoyable. The hardback is beautiful and it's nice and it has some really fun art in it and stuff. So it was worth reading, but definitely the one that I'm like, yeah, that would be one to read if you're just like, I want to read something quick, easy, and inconsequential, then go for that. Whereas Tress of the Emerald Sea, I mean, that ranks right up there as one of my all-time favorite Sanderson books. It was a delight. And Yumi was really, really good too, close behind. So, yeah, doing some reading. And then, I finished Control.
Oh, how did you find
the main game? It's weird. It's fun. I like it. But as we kind of said, I think that Remedy makes very interesting games, but whether or not they're good, I think there's a lot of subjectivity into whether you would play a Remedy game and say, wow, that was a really good game. I think that across the board, they're interesting. Whether or not you think they're good is a little bit up to you. And I thought that Control was very interesting and okay. So
the thing that they have in spades every time is vibes. In a vibes-based economy, Remedy would be the biggest publisher or developer on the planet. But we don't live in a vibes-based economy. We live in an economy where people want to play games that are good and fun to play, and that is not always the case. And Control is their best in terms of the way that it feels to play, and it still feels, to me at least, rather rough most of the time.
There are some definitely rough parts and times where you just kind of, well, and again, the whole idea behind the story was interesting, but I didn't feel like that the execution was great.
Sure.
This is like a 9 out of 10 idea with kind of a 5 out of 10 execution.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So it evens you out to a great 6.5, 7 out of 10. And you're like, yep, that is exactly where I would slot Control as a 6.5 out of 10.
Yep. So after I finished that, again, because I've been doing more reading, I just haven't started anything else up, trying to decide if I want to bust through the DLC for that, because I got the, Ultimate Edition or whatever. Or if I want to move on to something else. And that's about it. Other than you and I talked briefly before the pod, and this will be sort of a preface to what we'll do next week, or next 2 weeks, next time we record. Last Saturday, so a week ago yesterday, I had some friends come over and we rewatched Dune Part 1. And then Friday afternoon, Gareth and I went with those same friends to the Big D Theater, which is, small town Pocatello's closest we're going to get to something like an IMAX. And we watched Dune Part 2. And I am very excited for us to talk about it because I need to talk about that movie. And that is all I'm going to say.
All I know is what I've picked up from social media so far, which is people are pretty happy with it as an interpretation of the book. So I'm excited to see it. I heard that they make some really interesting choices that set up very clearly a third film that I don't know if it's been greenlit yet, but I know that the script is being worked on, and Hans Zimmer also posted on social media, oh yeah, I'm working on themes for that right now. Don't worry about it. So
I see. I hadn't seen any of that.
Villeneuve has a draft of Dune Messiah. It's done. A first draft is done, and Hans Zimmer is working on themes right now.
I mean, so here's what I'll say.
I think they're just waiting for the check to be cut. They got to make sure that this one makes enough money, which it sounds like it's probably going to. But they're probably just waiting until that happens, and then they'll be like, "Okay, here's your check, Denis. Go make your weird space movie. Go make us more money."
Which, it is a weird space movie. I will say briefly, there are some sort of cinematography and type things that are done in choices that I just thought were fascinating. And at the end of the movie, it is, and again, I'll give Denis Villeneuve a lot of credit for getting to the end of the movie to a place where if no other movie gets made, I would feel totally satisfied.
Sure.
At the same time, very much go, yep, we could totally do another. So,
give me Dune Messiah.
If they wanted to even go up through Children of Dune, I'd be okay. After Children of Dune, you have to stop.
You got to stop.
That's where it just comes off the rails, man.
You got to stop after that. God Emperor, you can't. We're good. We Gucci. And once he's dead, absolutely not. Brian Herbert into the trash can with you.
Oh my gosh.
And Kevin Anderson right along with you. No forgiveness to either of those men.
I tried so hard. I did. I read the Butlerian Jihad. I forced myself to make it through. I actually remember while reading that book feeling uncomfortable because of what a bad book it is, how poorly written it is.
Yeah.
Not because of the themes or anything that's going on. I just felt gross that I was reading this. And then I finished it and I tried to start, and I don't remember if it was House Harkonnen or House Atreides. I tried to start one of those, and about 20 pages in, I just said to myself and to my wife, screw it. These suck. I'm done.
Well, here's the deal. Kevin J. Anderson is a criminal who deserves gulag. And when the revolution comes, he will be put in the gulag where he belongs because he is a criminal who did criminal crimes to both Dune and Star Wars. And deserves a harsh prison sentence in the new regime.
Having read that one book and part of another, and then having read those, 3 books he wrote in the Star Wars expanded universe?
4, because he had the Jedi Academy trilogy and then was followed up with everyone's favorite stupid super weapon, Darksaber.
Oh, gosh.
Which, okay, listeners who may be like Star Wars noobs and or people who just watch Star Wars and didn't get sucked into the mostly bad EU, which, there you will still find defenders today online who are like, that's my Star Wars, no Rey Skywalkers for me. And to those people I say, have you actually thought about how bad those books are actually? In one of them, Luke falls in love with a Force ghost who possesses his students so they can fuck. Like, go to hell. These books suck. These books are terrible.
Some of them were okay.
Okay, Tim Zahn's books were okay, but even on revisit,
Tim
I was
Zahn's
like,
5 books were decent.
They're decent.
Those were all right.
They're decent.
They're
but
not groundbreaking. They're nothing great. They're not high art, but they were all right.
They're not as good as any of the Star Wars TV shows, except I guess I haven't watched Book of Boba Fett, but like, oh, you want some Star Wars? Go watch Rebels. Do you know what's a good fucking TV show? Star Wars Rebels. It's much better than any of those books. But anyway, the Darksaber, listeners, is not a cool lightsaber that is black. It is, in fact, what if you built a Death Star, but only the gun part? So it looks like the biggest lightsaber possible floating through space. Built by the Hutts, of course. The Hutts trying to make a play on the galactic geopolitical situation. Decide to build what if only the gun of a Death Star.
I gotta say, you are dredging up some deeply repressed memories I have, and I don't know if I'm okay with that.
It happens to us all. And then Michael Stackpole tried to fix the Jedi Academy trilogy with that I, Jedi book about Corran Horn, where he was like, okay, that Jedi Academy trilogy, it's rough, guys. Here's what was really happening. Corran Horn, was there for all of it, so I'll tell you about how it went from my POV, which is much more interesting than what anything Kevin G. Anderson could write, because I'm the dude who writes the Rogue Squadron books, which were also pretty okay.
Which those are great. Those are varying degrees of great.
Those are pretty great.
Depending on what you're looking for.
It's true. Anyway, anything else you want to bring up before we go off on more Star Wars tangents?
I was going to say, I think that's about it for me. So what have you been up to?
Well, I also went and saw a movie recently that I need to talk to someone about. And honestly, there was about 15 minutes after I went and saw it that I thought to myself, should I do this to Peter? Should I make him pivot? Would you like to guess what I maybe went and saw?
Oh, I don't even know what's come out lately except for Dune Part 2, because that was the only movie I was looking forward to. I have no idea.
Listeners, let's just say I am connected to her web.
No, you did not.
I went and saw Madam Web, and do you know what? It was fucking delightful. I had such a good fucking time at that movie, Peter.
Okay, here's what I'll say. When I don't have to go into a theater to watch it, I would be willing to do that.
Oh, it's a delight. I would be willing
to watch that.
Because
I will watch it at home where I can get up and take a leak anytime I want, and I can wander around and I can stop paying attention. I'll do it at home, but I'm not going to the theater.
That's fair. That's fair. Here's the thing. It is a period piece set in 2003, and it also feels like a movie that was made in 2003. So what does that mean? That means it does not feel like a Marvel-style blockbuster like you are used to seeing when it comes to superhero movies these days. Because even movies that are not in the Marvel mold are in dialogue with it. Like, part of what makes The Batman, the R-Pats movie, interesting is the ways in which it is in dialogue with the idea of how a Marvel movie works. And it is explicitly rejecting that. And you can see that it is making choices that are explicitly rejecting the Marvel mold. This genuinely feels like it's 2003. We have this obscure property. Let's shit something out, baby. And I thought it was the most delightful experience. I had so much fun at this movie. Everyone who was like, it's the worst movie I've ever seen. No, it's not. It's not the worst movie you've ever seen. It is a 5.5 out of 10. And if you've never seen a movie worse than a 5.5 out of 10, you're a liar. Or you've seen 3 movies. Because, like, I could name 10 movies that came out in the last week that are probably worse than Madam Web. It was fine, number one. Number two, Dakota Johnson has a way of delivering lines in that film where you're just like, oh my God, you're unhinged, huh? You're just like, you ain't right, girl. Something's wrong. And I had so much fun at that movie. It makes no sense. The casting choices are inexplicable. The bad guy's accent just like changes 4 times over the course of the movie, so you can't ever really place where he's supposed to be from because his accent keeps like shifting. The special effects look absolutely cheap. They look like they were, they look like 2003 special effects because the movie's set in 2003. I had so much fun. I took Cassie. Here, listeners, is the best endorsement I could possibly give this movie. I convinced Cassie to go see it with me, and she didn't fall asleep. And if you can get if you can get Cassie in a dark theater and she is awake for an entire film, that's a pretty okay movie. Because the last few movies we've been to, the only 2 she has stayed awake through the entirety of are Godzilla -1 and Madam Web. She did not stay awake through all of Marvel's. She conked right out during Black Panther Wakanda Forever. So, like, you got to say something for Madam Web if it was able to keep her awake and Black Panther couldn't. So that's all I'll say.
All right. Okay. I'll watch it. We'll talk about it.
Here's the thing. I see my future because I am connected to her web now, so I can also see the future just like Madam Webcam. I'm going to be a weird sicko for this movie. Even though it's not a good movie, it's going to be the one that whenever any people are like, that movie sucked, I'll be like, you shut the fuck up. This movie was pretty okay. Like, I can just see that future for myself, that I'm going to be a weirdo about this movie for 5 to 10 years. And then I'll probably stop caring about it. But, like,
okay,
it's going to be the one that I'm just kind of weird about. And I don't know how to feel about that. But I had a great time watching it, is what I'll say.
All right. There you go.
All right.
Well, what else?
Some other things I've been up to besides getting connected to the web of Madam Web. I have been reading a lot of comics. One that is worth mentioning that I think is really delightful. It needs a better name. I'll say that right up front. It is called The Guy She Was Interested In Wasn't a Guy at All. I don't think I've brought this up here yet, have I?
I don't think so.
Okay. I couldn't remember, and I didn't think I had. It's a very funny comic that's actually serialized on Twitter. So every chapter is only 4 pages because that's the max amount of images you can put in a single Twitter post. But like it started as this person just doing these goofy 4-panel or like 4-page, goofy jokes on Twitter, and now has like 2 volumes out in Japan and like is getting a lot of push. I've seen a bunch of like the ads like on the subways in Japan for this manga. What it's about is it is about this teenage girl who's like one of the popular girls at school, and like everybody really likes her. She's really cute, but she has a secret side. She's really into cool music that the other kids aren't into, which we'll come back to that. And so she starts going to the record store, and there's this person who works at the record store who she's like, oh my God, he's like tall and like hot and like knows so much about music, and he has like black painted fingernails. He looks so cool and punk. And what she doesn't realize, because this person wears a mask when they're at work, that's the girl who sits next to her in class, whose uncle owns this record store. And like... She wears glasses to school and then puts contacts in before she goes to work. And she paints her nails and then removes the paint before she goes to school because she doesn't want to get in trouble, because that'll get you in trouble with the teachers. And it's a very goofy conceit. But these 2 girls bond over both of them having really obscure taste in music. And what does that mean? They're into the Foo Fighters.
Not the Foo Fighters.
Oh, man, let's talk about Nirvana. Oh, boy.
That is so...
Pearl Jam. And so it's just, Radiohead. Let's talk about Creep, the song by Radiohead. What an underground secret song. Which, like... It's goofy. It's goofy that this is the conceit. And like every time they're talking about music and they're like, oh man, you need to hear this. Oh my God, it's them Crooked Vultures. It's like a secret side project of the Foo Fighters. And you're like, dog, that album sold like 9 million copies or some shit. This is not obscure. You just live in Japan. But since I don't live in Japan, I'm like, this is just dad rock. They play on the alt rock station every day. This is just X96.
Sounds like it.
Your music taste is X96 from 1993 to 2007. Like, that's all it is. But it's a very funny comic. It's very cute. And I just think it's delightful. And let's see. Is there anything else I should... Oh, the other thing I will mention is this, because I think it's funny. It's funny to talk about. So... I've mentioned before that I play a couple of these like live service gacha games. I play Genshin Impact. I also play Honkai Star Rail, which is another one made by these same people. But I've just gotten back into Star Rail. I'd been playing it when it first came out, and then I like really fell off and didn't play it for probably 6 or 8 months. But I've recently got back into it because one of the dumb things, and it is a dumb thing, but one of the dumb things that Hoyoverse does is they reuse the same characters with like different looks, but like it's still the same character in their different universes. So like their first big game, Honkai Impact 3rd, had this character in it named Raiden Mei, who's like one of the main characters. She's very cool. And then when you get to Genshin, which is their second big game, and you get to Inazuma, which is the Japanese inspired world in Genshin Impact, the leader of that is Raiden A, and she's basically just Raiden from Impact 3rd, but just in Genshin now. Except, and like, you could just tell it's like the same basic idea of a character, but like, it's different because it's a different universe and blah, 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 blah. She's not a teenage girl this time. She's a 500-year-old god. Don't worry about it. But Star Rail, I got back into because the Raiden XP is coming. Like, she's on her way. Her name's Acheron this time. She looks dope as hell. And so the only reason I'm bringing this up is because I was like, oh, I'm going to get back into Star Rail, and I'll like save up all my gacha pulls so that I can pull for her, and I should be able to get her and maybe also her weapon, because then she'll be a lot stronger if I can get her signature weapon. But I'm just like, playing along, and like things show up on your Reddit, and if you ever click a single thing that you're not like a subreddit you're in, guess what's going to show up in your like homepage on Reddit for the rest of your life until you say, don't ever show me this again, is whatever thing you clicked on. And I clicked at some point on Acheron mains, because any character that comes out in these games gets a so-and-so mains. In other words, people who are really into this character, who are like super excited about this character, and they'll talk about like, how do I effectively play with this character after they come out? Or sometimes they'll like devolve into, they did this character so dirty once they come out and they're not very strong. This specifically happened with the Genshin character Dia, which was a character I was really excited about. She came out and she's really mid. And like no one really likes her, and she doesn't play that, like she doesn't have like, she's not like a really good strong character like some of the other characters in the game. So like that subreddit is just like, it would have been so good if she'd been cool. But like, so there's already one for this character who's not out yet. She's not out. She doesn't come out for another like 25 days. That's when she'll finally be available for you to even try to get her. And the level of Doom posting is so funny to me, because these folks have convinced themselves through leaks from a beta and screenshots that have been passed around and machine translated from Chinese that they know exactly how this character is going to play, and she's not going to be strong enough because XYZ. And I just read it and think it's the funniest thing in the world to care this much about a silly gacha game that's just like an easy Persona knockoff. Mm-hmm. It's very funny to me. It is a delightful game. I have a lot of fun playing it, but the funniest part is seeing these communities outside of it just malding out about like, she won't be strong enough, and she's supposed to be one of the strongest because she's the XP for Raiden May. Why would they do this? And it's like, just calm down, guys. She's not even out yet. You don't even know. You don't know what's going to happen. Maybe other characters will make her better. This has happened with characters in these types of games before, where someone comes out and they're like, this character kind of seems kind of mid, and then other characters come out that have good synergy with that character, and suddenly they're like the strongest one. So like, they need to all calm down, but it is very funny to watch, like in a detached way, just like scrolling through the comments and just being like, what are these people so up ons about? Like, it's just a girl in a video game who you don't even need to win. It's not like you need her to win. You could say, I'm good, not ever try to get her, and still play the game just fine. You can play the game with the characters they give you for free. It's very funny.
Yeah, well, that's just what the internet has exposed, is that there are a lot of people who are like that about anything.
That's true.
One of the things I have noticed is, so I use the program Obsidian. It's my primary kind of writing / little note taking, I guess you could loosely say, personal knowledge management application. Uh-huh. And the reason I like Obsidian and the reason I kind of moved to it over all these other note taking apps is because underneath the hood, all Obsidian is its folders of .md files. Markdown files. Mm-hmm. So basically they're just text files. So if, something ever happens to Obsidian, hey, guess what? All of my notes are just .md files on my hard drive, and I can never lose anything, and there's nothing proprietary, and there's no, how do I export my data bullshit, as like there is with some of these other, note-taking apps and stuff. So I like that. And I tell you, man, every day, because, I joined the Obsidian subreddit at some point, because when I started using it, I was like, oh, let me see if there's tips and stuff. And I see people who use this, like, look, guys, it's just like a notes app. And they're like spending hours a day building templates and homepages. And there's this whole like project called Life OS in Obsidian. And I'm like, man, like, you guys need to like step away from the keyboard, go outside,
just be cool,
take a deep breath,
just be cool.
I mean, it's great that you're passionate about it, but guys, it's just folders full of text files. Like, that's not that big of a deal. You shouldn't let that dictate your freaking life, but people do. People get obsessed about weird things, man.
That's very weird. It is very, very weird. All right. Well, should we move on to our main event? You know what else is? What else is very weird? When Mothra grabs Godzilla by the tail and drags him multiple football fields backwards, and it's very weird and very funny. In case you didn't know what we were doing tonight, you didn't like this one, did you?
I'm going to let you get started, then we'll talk about it.
Yeah, I knew you wouldn't like this one. Here's the thing. I knew it, and that's okay. This is why we're pivoting to other ones after this.
It is okay. It's totally okay.
All right. So, as I said, listeners, our film tonight that we're going to be talking about is a 1964 classic Mothra versus Godzilla. Here's the thing. This is one of the better ones after that first one. It's one of the better ones.
Oh, boy. That's good to know.
You're like, when we first watched Godzilla, you were like, maybe I should get that big Criterion box set. And now you're like, there's no world where I'm buying that freaking Criterion box set if this is one of the better ones.
Yeah, you might have nailed it.
Anyway, we are going to be talking about Mothra versus Godzilla. It is the fourth movie in the Godzilla franchise. After we talked about a couple episodes ago, Godzilla, then there was Godzilla Strikes Again, which is dog shit. It's very, very bad. Then there's King Kong versus Godzilla, and then Mothra versus Godzilla, which is simultaneously a sequel. Toho did it way before the MCU did. This is simultaneously a sequel to King Kong versus Godzilla and 1961's Mothra. And suddenly these two titans were meeting together. How did you find this film, Peter?
It bored the crap out of me.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
It's okay. It's okay. Look, part of it could be, I've had a very busy week. Work was very busy. It was funny. The reason I couldn't record Thursday night like we usually would is because that was the only night that the group could get together for Dungeons and Dragons. And we get out into the middle of BFE where the guy who DMs moved recently, which has quite honestly significantly complicated the endeavor. But we're out there and the power goes out. So we have no internet because he has no signal out there. And I don't know, we spent 2.5 hours just playing from memory of what our skills and our spells were and all this kind of crap by candlelight. Friday again, busy. So, and then yesterday, I was going to watch this yesterday, and then we had this snowpocalypse come through, which took out our power for a little bit in the middle of the night, but knocked out the internet for, the better part of half a day. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't really until yesterday or this afternoon that I had time to watch this. I've done a lot of snow shoveling in the last 28 hours. I'm tired. And man, I had a hell of a time staying awake through this thing. And here's what I'll say. I think the biggest reason it didn't click for me is, as the Godzilla movie neophyte here, folks who listen will remember, the thing that impressed me the most about Godzilla -1 was it was those interpersonal stories and relationships told through the lens of a Godzilla movie. Mm-hmm. And I still think that there was quite a bit of that in the first one. You've got the tension between, the guy character and the girl that he's in love with, but she's been promised to the doctor guy, and the relationship between them and the tension between all that. Mm-hmm. I didn't feel there was a single bit of interesting interpersonal anything in Mothra versus Godzilla.
That is definitely true, I think.
I mean, we've got the main guy who's a reporter, I guess.
He is.
And the girl who's tagging along with him, who was the photographer who went with him. And then we've got a few other people. We've got this doctor who wants to study the egg, but literally all he ever does is scrape the side of the egg and then bums around with these other two people. Mm-hmm. And then you've got the, quote, bad guy, the guy who buys the egg and then goes crazy and punches the guy who was, funding him until he's got a bloody nose and then gets shot in the head.
That part was super exciting, though.
I mean, that part was probably one of the more exciting parts of the movie. but that was the part that I felt like was missing. I mean, you've got the people you have the I'm sorry, I will not say stoop. No, I'm going to say you have the stupid little, you have just these stupid little miniature girls, women, whatever, who are singing to Mothra the whole fucking movie and like running around talking and just like they're probably the most interesting people in the entire movie.
Oh,
because the whole time you're watching the movie, you're like, what the fuck is up with these two?
Oh, absolutely.
And you never find out.
No, you're like, why are they so tiny? How are they able to move so fast when they're so tiny?
Yeah. And then the times that they're put in the like little box.
The box.
And then you see the doctor. It's like running and the box is like shaking in his hand. I'm like, oh, those poor little ladies. They're so fucked up right now.
So sorry, twins. That's not very kind to you. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's definitely true.
I would have actually, what I was hoping for, my biggest hope for this whole movie is we get introduced, and I know I'm jumping a synopsis here, but whatever.
No, it's fine.
We get introduced to these two little things, these two little twins that are basically, they want the egg returned to them. And then they start telling kind of our trio of heroes about Infant Island and the people who are there because in the nuclear testing, and it all gets back to the atomic testing and the atomic, exposure to radiation. What I wanted more than anything was that when we finally meet those people, I wanted them to be tiny. I wanted all of the people on the island. I wanted the whole island to be tiny people like these two twins. And if that had been the case, I would have given this movie an extra 1.5 stars just for having the chutzpah to make the entire island populated by, 8 to 10 inch tall people. That would have been fantastic.
Instead, you got a kind of racially insensitive native population that you're like, what the hell? What are we doing here, guys?
I want them to be tiny so much.
Yeah, I did. I wish they'd been tiny too. You're right. That would have made it better. It would have made it better.
Okay. All right. Tell us about this movie.
So, quick recap for this movie. There's a big typhoon, and the next morning, this reporter goes out to be like, oh, this place got destroyed. Oh, wait, there's an egg in the ocean. So this seaside village pulls the egg out of the ocean, and they're like, hey, it's our egg. And then they sell it to this other guy, this businessman, who decides to sell it to this other guy who's the money man, who then leases it back to him. Don't worry about it. It's all money dumb stuff. Where there's clearly a rube who tries to take advantage of the people and gets to take advantage of his own. Regardless, they're gonna build a theme park around this egg about whatever hatches in it. And in the meantime, the reporter. I
just want to say, I just have to interject here about the egg. I appreciated the specificity. I don't remember the numbers. But when the people of the island tell the doctor, we sold the egg to this dude for 1 million something yen, and the reporter's like, that's a weird number. And then that dude is like, well, eggs go for 80 yen or whatever, a chicken egg, and we estimate that this is the size that equals this many chicken eggs, so this times this equals that number. And I love that they did the math. Though it was stupid,
very funny.
I love that they did that.
Yeah, it's very funny because they're like, oh, yeah, it's 153,000 eggs worth of egg. So we sold it for however much it would cost for 153,000 eggs. It's very silly.
Yep. It was great.
But anyway, they start building this theme park. During this point, this trio that you mentioned, the reporter, the photographer, and the doctor. First off, it is worth mentioning. Did you recognize the reporter?
No.
That's Akira Takarada. That was the main character of the first Godzilla movie. The guy who was trying to get his girlfriend away from the old doctor man. That was him again.
Oh. Yeah, I did not pick up on that.
He recurs multiple times throughout the series. He shows up in the next, or I guess 2 movies later, Invasion of Astro Monster, this time as an astronaut. He's also in Ebirah, A Horror of the Deep. He's also in King Kong Escapes. He's also in Godzilla-verse Mothra, which is the opposite of this movie from 1992, and a bunch of other stuff too. So like he was just around in these Godzilla movies. But yeah, like he plays the main character in the first one and plays the main character in this one and then plays the main character in the movie 2 movies later, and they're all 3 different people. Which, okay. I guess if you've got the Toho players, you got the Toho players. Same thing happens with Professor Mura, the professor who they meet with. He's in a ton of these too. He also shows up in the next movie as Professor Mirai, who is different than Professor Mura. He was also in Mothra as Professor Chujo. He'll also show up in Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla as Professor Waguda. So, like, they just nailed it. This guy looks like a professor. Every time we need a professor, we call Hiroshi Koizumi in and we say, okay, this time your name is Chujo. Deal with it. But
good for him. Good for him.
Get that check, get that check. Anyway, our 3 heroes, the reporter, the photographer, and the professor, meet the little ladies, the Shobijin, if you will, who are these like 8-foot tall ladies who speak in unison all the time, played by these twins who are like pop stars at the time, which is why they have them sing so much, because they hired these 2 pop stars.
Okay. All right.
And they're like, you got to give us back the egg. Mothra wants her egg back. And they're like, well, what do you expect us to do about it? We'll try. And so they like go and try to like convince the capitalist dudes to like give up the egg because Mothra wants it back. And then they like show them the tiny ladies and they're like, yo, we'll buy those tiny ladies for 5 million yen. And they're like, they're not for sale. And they're like, you just made a huge mistake. We want to buy them tiny ladies to also put in our theme park.
Right.
And so the tiny ladies are like, hey, you guys suck, so we're going to go home. And they hop on Mothra's back because Mothra was just hiding on a hillside. Don't worry about it. She's just chilling.
Just hanging out there.
Just chilling. They fly back. At about this time, Godzilla emerges from the mud where they have been draining after that typhoon at Kurata Beach. It's a very cool scene of him emerging, coming out of the mud. And it is a scene that, like, that vision of him coming out of mud instead of water this time, or coming out of dirt this time, is a thing that we will see in like referenced in other materials. Like in that Monarch show that just aired, there's a really cool scene where that legendary Godzilla is buried under sand and like reemerges from underneath the sand. And it's very cool. And you can tell, oh, this is them evoking this scene in Mothra versus Godzilla. Here's the thing though. This Godzilla is the dumbest motherfucker. He's so clumsy and stupid in a way that he was not in that first movie. And granted, that's because that one's dead. That good Godzilla from the first movie, he got. So this is a different Godzilla. In the storyline, they're like, oh, when Godzilla raids again, the second movie, there's a second Godzilla. They're like, I guess it's another Godzilla. Sorry. So clearly, he is the dumber younger brother of our cool
but you're
dead
not
Godzilla.
Kidding. You're not kidding. He goes into the city, gets his tail stuck in an antenna,
and just
flails around, wiggles it until he yanks it out, knocks over the antenna, and in so doing loses his balance and stumbles into a building. And then later, and I love that they show this, like they zoom in on it.
So funny.
He like is walking along and he just doesn't notice that there's like a drop in the ground.
He trips off the curb.
He trips off the curb, stumbles down, his foot slides down this like cement embankment, and then he collapses into a house, a big like pagoda style building, and then totally destroys it too.
Yeah, and then he's like, well, fuck you. This is your fault. And starts punching the building like it's the building's fault that he tripped and wasn't watching that his foot fell down he rolled his ankle on the curb like so many of us have done. Did. And instead of like getting up and being like, nah, that was on purpose. Ha ha ha.
Looking around, like, seeing who caught that.
Yeah, instead, he saw that the building caught that, so then he's like, well, fuck you, building, and, like, destroys the building. He's the dumbest Godzilla. And, like, he's got these weird, like, did you notice his, like, eyebrows are, like, lighter gray?
They're, like, a lighter color.
So he always just kind of looks, and, like, his eyes, like, roll back into his... It's a bad design for the monster. Like, some of the Showa-era designs I really like. Some of them I really don't. This one is a bad one. In my humble IMO, I don't like this one. Yeah. His jowls are really like trembly, and he just kind of looks dumb. Like his eyes are kind of crossed all the time. He's a dumb Godzilla. So he's just like fucking things really up. Is. And indiscriminately. Doesn't seem to have any reason, and seems to be taking his good time because they have time to build a bunch of traps to try to stop him. But he just seems like he's just kind of like, sometimes I'm walking, sometimes I'm falling into buildings, whatever. The heroes all go to Infant Island to appeal to the people there, to talk to the Shobijin again, to try to get Mothra to help. Again, we're very disappointed that they're not a whole sea of very tiny people. They should have been. Would have been the right choice.
Would have been better.
Instead, they're like, hey, we'd love Mothra to come. And everyone's like, no, do you see what you did to our island? Everything's on our island. On our island is dead because you guys keep shooting nuclear tests around it. And then they like the little girls run off and find Mothra, and so they follow. And then Mothra's like, "Yeah, I'll come help. I got to go get my egg back anyway, assholes." So
and I'm about.
Oh, and I'm dying.
Also,
yeah. If I leave again, I'm dying. And I guess I'll do that for you. And it's very, very funny. And so she does. She flies back just about the time. Kismet is kismet. Just about the time. Godzilla, the JSDF has tried to stop Godzilla. They try to electrify him. It works for a little bit, and then it gets too hot, so the wires melt, and then he gets up and he melts everything with his atomic breath. He's just like trouncing around. As you said, the rube of the two capitalists goes to try to get some money back from the more craven of the two capitalists, beats him to a bloody pulp, like caves his face in basically, and then goes to like steal a bunch of money from him and gets himself shot in the back of the head. And then Godzilla shows up just about that moment, destroys the whole hotel, and both of them get it. Both of them get what they deserve.
Heck yeah.
And about that time is when Mothra shows up. Godzilla's at the egg, and clearly Godzilla is like, I want to eat that egg. And so he starts destroying the building around it, and that's when really Mothra shows... Oh, go ahead.
I just have to say, now I realize that they were in the process of building the theme park around the egg. It's the worst theme park ever. All that we got
terrible
is basically like the greenhouse type building around the egg, and then the incubators that are going to heat this thing up so they can hatch it. They got nothing else.
They got nothing.
This is bad theme park. They did a bad job. They should feel bad.
Absolutely. And they said it was going to be the biggest theme park in the world, and they did not follow through on that promise.
Nope.
Sorry about Happy Center. You don't got it like that. Also, it's called Happy Center. Not a great
because
name.
It's the Happy Company.
It's because it's a happy company. Funnily enough, the idea of building theme parks surrounding or about large monsters does come up later in Godzilla-verse Gigan in a very funny way. They build an entire life-size Godzilla statue that Godzilla smashes. It's very funny. Anyway, Godzilla tries to eat the egg. Mothra shows up. Again, as I said earlier, grabs him by the tail and just drags him for like half a mile, and it's very funny.
After she like beats her wings at him and blows him over. Like, here's the thing. I was curious, what is a giant moth gonna do to Godzilla?
A surprising amount.
And she holds her own for a fair bit, but it basically involves grabbing him by the tail and dragging him and then beating the wings at him until we get the poison pollen.
Yeah, the poison pollen comes out. It's almost going to get him, but he gets off a good blast of his atomic breath, gets her in the wing. And she was already on her deathbed. She's a grandma. She's an old lady. Actually, she hatched 3 years ago. Don't worry about it. She hatched 3 years ago in the Mothra movie, but she's old. Moths don't live that long, even if they're enormous. Right. So she almost has him. She has the upper hand. She uses the last of her strength to fly to the egg and like drape her wing across it as she dies. And Godzilla again, this is the dumbest and most vindictive that we've ever seen Godzilla. It feels like he has realized, I don't know how he found out because he's Godzilla. Oh, on this island on the coast, there's a teacher and 10 students who we forgot to evacuate. And Godzilla's like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to that island. I'm going to smush those kids. So he starts heading towards that island. Why? It never tells you. It doesn't say why he's doing it, but he does. About that time, the singing begins again. The egg starts thrumming with energy, and it hatches, and 2 larvae come out this time. It's twins, baby. We'll talk about what happens to the twins later. But the twins are like, okay, we're on a mission. We got to stop Godzilla and save them kids. So they also swim to the island. And the denouement of this film is one of the funniest things that I've ever seen. As Godzilla is on top of this island, the 2 cute little larva animatronics, which they're very cute, like squirm their way up the hill and then just basically like sniper him with silly string and then hide behind the rocks when he tries to atomic breath them. But they snipe him with silly string until it becomes an entire silk cocoon and he can't move anymore and he falls into the ocean and disappears.
Yep.
And then it's over. The 2 little larvae like start swimming their way back to Infant Island, and it ends with the what's his name? The reporter saying, "Thank you for coming, and we'll make a better world." Do they? They do not. I can tell you because there's 10 more movies after this. They do not follow through on Sakai's promise of building a better world.
That is disappointing.
The 2 twins leave, and that is the end of the film. It's very dumb. It's very, very dumb, especially in comparison to the 2 that we saw before this. But this also sets the scene for what the Showa era is, which is why I picked this one as an example of this first era of Godzilla. Because that first movie is a real outlier because it's bleak and it's dark and it's kind of scary and it's very sad. And most of them are like this. There's some goofy special effects from bad to good. There's some monster on monster action. You don't care about who the people are. You've never cared about who any of these people are. You don't know any of their names. You'll never remember any of their names, even if you've seen this movie 15 times. They're just people who are there to get to the next scene where the monsters fight. And so that's why I picked this one, because I feel like it is a very good example of those without quite being as over-the-top goofy as some of the later ones get.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
But like you said, I really enjoy it, but it doesn't make for a good movie. It's a movie I like. It's not a movie that's good.
Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah, which I think is really funny because like this one's really highly regarded as like one of the best Godzilla sequels. Fast-paced story. I'm reading this review. Fast-paced story, sure. Likable characters. Do they? Are they?
I didn't know anything about these characters.
Do you know the one I can tell you the most about?
Dislike them.
You know the one I can tell you the most about is the other reporter who eat egg.
He's
in like 5 scenes, and in 4 of those 5 scenes, he is eating an egg.
Hard-boiled egg, scooping out a soft-boiled egg. And we don't see it, but I guarantee you in that little teeny frying pan that he's got, there's a fried egg in there.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's a very goofy movie. I like it a lot, but it is very bad.
Yeah. You know, it was interesting watching this because it was so different than the last, well, really 2, but in particular, but then the first, Godzilla. I mean, that had that had a very specific tone to it. You could tell that there was really something that they were aiming for. And I just didn't feel like this had really much, if any, of that. Just, I'm trying to think what I would liken it to. And I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but yeah, it's kind of that, you get the first, not really the same because these are both really good movies, but you think the first, Alien, you've got Alien, which is this tense kind of much more horror sort of movie. And then you've got Aliens, which, a much better movie than this one, is much more, a sci-fi action sort of thing. Yes, it
Absolutely.
has very tense moments. It has that sort of thing, but it is a very different type of movie as opposed to the first. And I think that's what you get here with this.
Oh, absolutely. I see in this film, and one of the reasons why I think this is also an interesting one to watch as we're doing kind of a survey of the peaks. I'm trying to avoid valleys. I'm trying to stick to peaks as I show you a few of these films, which you can say, well, those valleys must be real deep after this one because this is one of the peaks. But like that first movie is a movie for adults. Like it is somber and dark and suspenseful and is clearly a film whose primary intended audience is adults. You watch this one and you're like, I think that we've seen the primary intended audience get younger. This is a movie for kids now because it's big, it's dumb, it's funny. Watching the monsters fight is exciting. But that's where like the series makes a tilt here. And it is no longer a somber post-war film where we ruminate on nuclear destruction. It is now big monsters fight in suits. It's very fun. Oh man, there's lots of tanks shooting firecrackers at a dude in a monster suit, Mm-hmm. And so that's why I think this is an interesting one to look at, is as that kind of pivot that we see through the rest of, especially the Showa era, which is this first era, the first 14 or 15 or so Godzilla movies. And this is a higher point. It gets to a real nadir when you get to, Son of Godzilla, for example, which is one of the most dog shit movies that I've ever seen, where Godzilla has a little baby boy named Mania who looks like the Michelin Man had a baby with Godzilla, and he shoots smoke rings instead of atomic fire. Like, it's not good. Son of Godzilla is bad. Destroy All Monsters is bad. But I think this one's pretty okay. As an example of what it is. It's not my favorite from this era. Sure. My favorite from this era is the one I had on VHS when I was a kid. And that's why it's my favorite, is because I had Godzilla-verse Mechagodzilla on a VHS tape and watched it 8 billion times. So, like, Mothra versus Godzilla does not have that, like, indelible, like, pressure on my brain the way the Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla will always have. Like, watching the Shrine Maiden sing until the mountain pops open and King Caesar appears is like, just will always be a part of my psyche until the day I die. And so Mothra versus Godzilla doesn't have it like that for me, but it is fun to see my girl Mothra, who I'm a big fan of, also have her name tattooed on me. It's one of the 3 monster names I have, because I really like her. And I think that this is a fun Godzilla movie. I do unfortunately have to tell you that the twins thing is never followed up on. In the next movie, there's only one. There's only one larva left. One of them must have got on the swim back to Infant Island.
Dang it all. That's
but she shows up again to fight Ghidorah in the next movie, and you gotta do that, because once Ghidorah shows up, that's when it's a real mess. Are we ever gonna see Ghidorah in any of the ones I picked? We might not.
Oh.
You know who Ghidorah is, though, right?
Is Ghidorah the one with the 3 heads?
Hell yeah, he is. He's the stupidest one. I love him so much. No arms, 3 heads, big wings. I don't know how he moves. Not very well. He's the worst. I'm the best. I love Ghidorah so much, but I genuinely don't. Oh no, we'll see him the only time he was not the bad guy in 2001's Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All Out Attack, which despite that name is very good and is a more serious one for adults.
Okay.
But we'll get to that one.
Take your word for it. We'll get there.
We'll get to that one in a couple of films. Well, do you have any other thoughts on Mothra versus Godzilla now that you've seen 2 real good Godzilla movies and one that's not so good now? Are you starting to question my process here?
No, I'm still trusting the process. I'm
Okay.
still trusting the process.
All right.
But the last thing I want to say about this is, look, Godzilla, we need to have a talk, man. I get it. I know
Spatial
your arms
awareness
aren't super long, and I know they're not as bad as like T-Rex arms, but you got them. But you got these 2 feet, and you can do stuff with them. You don't just have to flail your tail around. You could do something with your feet too. You could like kick stuff, and you can and I know you like step on stuff, but it kind of always just looks accidental. Like you're just kind of like, you didn't really know what's happening with these meat appendages at the bottom of you. And but you could use your feet to do something and not just whip your tail at everything.
Here's I'm going to send you something that I would like you to watch live on the pod. So that you can see, this is not from one of the movies that we're going to be watching, but I do need you to see it so that you can see that he eventually learns to use his feet for something in tandem with the tail. So please to enjoy this 33-second scene. If you are at home and are eager to watch it, you can Google Godzilla versus Megalon dropkick scene and enjoy jet jaguars there, and you can see what this very cool Godzilla does.
I have seen this before, and it is delightful.
See,
this is what I'm talking about, Godzilla. Get those feet up, do something with them, go for it.
Just do some real wrestling moves. Like, this is some wrestling moves, because it all looks like it's all kayfabe. Why would Megalon stand there and let Jet Jaguar hold him while Godzilla backs up 2 football fields and then slides on his tail and drop kicks him with both feet? It's very silly. It's very, very silly.
It was great.
So he does eventually learn how to use his feet.
Good.
It's a good one.
It's
a good one. And that Godzilla design, that's an all-timer.
Oh, yeah.
That face is the same Godzilla face that they use from Megalon. They also use it in Gigan and Mechagodzilla. That's the one, the tattoo on my arm is based on that specific suit. Because that is the face of Godzilla to me, is that era.
Nice.
So there you go. Well, thank you all for listening. As you heard, in 2 weeks, we will be back discussing another film. However, it will be the 2024 film, Dunk 2.
That's right.
I'm sorry. Everyone in this Discord I'm in just calls it Dunk 2 because of the, I will admit, very cool looking logo treatment where it is just this same U shape turned all 4 ways to make the word, but then it does look like it's saying dunk, even though they have a star or moon there to be like the middle line on the E. Anyway, we all call it dunk. But we'll be back to talk about Dune 2 in 2 weeks. I'm very excited to have a good reason to, because I was like, I should go see it. I just haven't gotten around to it. But now I have a good reason to finally go see it.
Excellent. I look forward to it.
And until
I'm
then,
hoping to go see it a second time myself.
I think you'll have to. You want to be fresh before our chat.
Oh, very much so. Very much so.
All right. So until then, take care of yourself, and we'll be back in 2 weeks with that conversation.
Bye.